Hi, this is Bill Hader.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Bill Hader. Bill Hader.
Hello and welcome to another episode of We Heart Hater. I am Deej Barons.
And I'm your co-host and no-show New Jersey construction worker, Casey Killingsworth. What can I say? I don't like being on site.
We are back to season 33. Today's episode is all about October 13th, 2007. Season 33, episode 3, hosted by Jon Bon Jovi and musical guest, the Foo Fighters. I'm going to let Casey take the lead on this one because I had a bit of a bump to the head yesterday, so trying to stay in line and coherent is probably not my best shot. Right. Make sure never have your sister surprise you when you're trying to close your car hood. Before we start the episode, though, we have some exciting new Bill Hader news. Bill has not had a great time lately. Back the previous January, there was a Palisades fire, the incident at Conan's holiday party, Jane's ransom, taking his own life. Then there was his breakup with Ali Wong. It's a bit of a rough ride for Bill, but it's finally been announced that his first feature film directorial debut is going to be a horror film called They Know. This was co-written with his high school best friend and long-term collaborator Duffy Boudreaux. And so this is a story from Deadline. In his first outing behind the camera since Barry, his Emmy-winning dark comedy for HBO, Bill Hader has officially locked in plans to write, direct, and star in They Know, a new horror film for MRC, which will begin production in Los Angeles this spring. Bill played a divorced dad who grows suspicious that his ex-wife is secretly dating a mysterious man who's having a strange influence on their children. Hasn't been confirmed yet. Linda Cardellini is in talks to play the wife, and it's going to be produced under Bill Hader's company Hanarply. I've seen sort of Barry so many times, so I am very much looking forward to see his first outing, because if you saw one of the episodes, episode 6 of the final season of Barry, this is one sequence definitely shows has potential as a horror director as well. One of the early movies he was influenced by was The Evil Dead, so much so that after he ran into it on a late night movie, he got a video camera from his father and he would chase his sisters around the woods in the back, trying to sort of make his own version of it. Very happy to see that Bill will have something to work on. A lot of Barry fans, like myself, have been very much waiting for Bill to get his first feature, and also, which is originally he had said that he didn't want to act in his first feature. I guess he changed his mind. I am so looking forward to this.
Yeah, me too. I'm really excited to see it when it comes out, or at least just find out more about it as details come out. And yeah, him directing his first movie does feel like Bill's finally achieved all his goals in Hollywood and show business. Yeah, it does seem like he's set out to be a director, at dreams, goals, aspirations of directing. We know I can't wait to see where that takes him, and it's nice to see him continue down the Jordan Peele, Zach Kreger path of the mid to late 2000s sketch comedian to mid to late 2010s, early 20s auteur pipeline is becoming a very real thing.
People have been wanting to see Bill direct horror, and he's always been a big horror fan, so I think this is going to be really good.
Let's start with this episode's host, Mr. Bon Jovi himself. We all know him as a musician, I'm sure. As far as what I think of his catalog, I think my first exposure to him was It's My Life. Like most people, I like Living on a Prayer just fine, and passively tolerated Dead or Alive and Bad Medicine, stuff like that. But other than that, I was never a huge Bon Jovi fan. A lot of stuff about that band just strikes me as, I wouldn't go as far as to call him Timu Springsteen. I mean, he kind of defies most genres, although he's got all the elements of a hair metal band, but the sound has never been quite metal. Something you would have had to have, grown up in the 80s in New Jersey to to be into.
My first exposure to his was the song Runaway, which is one of the first part of something called the Power Station demos back in 1981. And yeah, I've seen other songs throughout the years. In the 80s, hair metal was definitely a thing, and I was into a lot of it. That was his very first single. I mean, it's not offensive. It's just not something I really go to for my thing of music. Just to give you the history with his SNL experiences, his actual name is John Francis Bon Jovi Jr. First appearance as musical guest was January 9th, 1993. Season 18, Episode 12, with Danny DeVito as the host. Next was February 18th, 1995. Season 20, Episode 13, with Deion Sanders. And I believe you mentioned it was Andre Agassi that he briefly portrayed in that episode?
Yeah, so Jon Bon Jovi plays Andre Agassi opposite Laura Keitlinger's Brooke Shields in that bloated, overlong SP sketch, which I think is on YouTube for some reason, but that was like his first acting on SNL, and the fact that he was a musical guest for the Deion Sanders episode in general isn't the best omen for this episode, but, well, hey, I'll hand it to Deion. He was a great coach for CU's football team, my college's football team, for the last few years.
Well, we both know SNL's history with athlete hosts, so it's always a hit or miss kind of thing. Next, Season 26, Episode 19, May 12th, 2001. And his last appearance ever on Saturday Night Live was Season 35, Episode 19, December 12th, 2009, host Taylor Lautner. He has done a bit of other acting before. His very first film he did was Moonlight and Valentino in 1995. And then in 1999, he appeared in Season 2, Episode 13 of Sex and the City, episode called Games People Play. He plays a guy that Carrie met in a therapist office. They ended up going on a date.
Couple more tidbits on other SNL appearances besides this one. He did do a DeMarco Brothers sketch with Catan and Parnell in the Laura Flynn Boyle episode where they auditioned to be that musical guest dancers. The Taylor Lautner episode from 2009, that was the week where, according to Jason Sudeikis, he and Will Forte asked Jon Bon Jovi to be in a John Bovi sketch they were going to do on Weekend Update, and he said no. So about a decade later, they would do it on Seth's Second Chance Theater. They would just do the John Bovi they were going to do that night. They got cut from dress rehearsal. It bugged me at the time because it was like the one time they did previously established sketch or premise instead of something more unique than that. Besides that, he has done some other acting, as Deej mentioned. You may not know it from watching this episode, but then again, live sketch comedy is a different beast entirely, especially if you are hosting a full 90-minute sketch variety show rather than just doing two songs, being one sketch for the rest of the show. As far as this episode going in, my impressions of him as a host, revisiting this episode, I discovered that it wasn't quite as bad as I remembered. It was just a rather uneven show that I was slightly tempted to put him in the same category of host as Steven Seagal or Robert Blake. As far as I know, he's not as big of a monster as that. And one of the reasons why I was a little hesitant to revisit this whole episode, not just because we've already talked about Bill's two biggest moments here in the third and fourth episode of our podcast, and I mentioned one of those on my blog, the first post-monologue sketch, because I know Deej loves to talk about this specific flavor of Bill character.
From Secaucus, New Jersey, it's everybody's favorite game show. Oh! And here's your host. He's a good guy, Johnny Vincente.
This might be his second ever game show host role.
That is correct. The very first was Dry Eyes. Somehow I completely missed in the list of game shows. My sincere apologies for that. Still a very good episode, though.
So this is him getting the market cornered on that during these years. So Bill plays Johnny Vincente. It's an Italian-themed, Jersey-based game show. The contestants are Fred Armisen, Jon Bon Jovi, and Daryl Hammond. And the object is to see which of these three contestants can produce the best outrage response to a minor shock or distressing situation for an everyday New Jersey resident, and it ends with a speed round with prompts from a woman played by Kristen Wiig, who is revealed to be the host Kumar. Right off the bat, Bill's a solid anchor of this sketch. He's wearing the nicest suit he's ever worn on the show up to this point. He's giving the most entertaining performance in this, but he's only the second most convincing as a Jersey Italian, right behind the host, who is an actual born and raised Jersey Italian. Jon Bon Jovi has a tendency to just mumble his lines like Bruce Willis or Seagal did, but not as bad. Brian Armisen is trying a little bit too hard to play generic Italian guy, and Daryl Hammond's just there to do his James Gandolfini impression, which they explain with his character being a professional Tony Soprano impersonator that seems to perform exclusively at car washes, and he is in third place right before the speed round. There was a brief moment I missed the first time we talked about this. Daryl exits the scene, and for a second, he's in Bill's shot. He's in Bill's frame, and Bill just says, hey, all right. But I like that, and him just saying he didn't buzz in the second question.
Your teenage son is playing video games at 4 in the afternoon. His mother asks him to clean up his room. Your son responds, here's a better idea. Why don't you clean it instead of sitting on your fat ass? Oh! Carlo, go! Mike, you didn't owe it all on that last one.
Yeah, well, my kid would have a point. My wife is fat and lazy.
Could have just cut out or tightened up his response to the mention of the word homosexuality being, before Bill even asks the question. And Wig made a good pissed off mistress. Speaking of this sketch's treatment of women in general, I like how none of the guys had any offended response to prompt of picking up a prostitute and then in the act remembering it's your wife's birthday. The low quality prizes. Daryl's character gets a gift certificate to Sal D'Antoni's Undershirt Emporium. Bon Jovi wins, so he gets seats to a Devils home game. And Fred's in second place, so he gets slightly worse seats to a Devils home game. Now, we do have more in-depth discussion of this sketch in the 5th episode of our podcast, In the Game. We talk about Bill's early game show host roles on SNL. But Deej, do you have anything to say about this sketch that you haven't said yet?
As you mentioned, Jersey Bill is one of my favorite versions of Bill. Just really, he seems to have a lot of fun with this kind of role. The shirt with a different collar, that really got me. I don't know much about New Jersey. All we want to hear from film and television, but it does seem a very Jersey kind of thing to wear. I mean, he looks incredibly good in this sketch. Every time he does play someone from New Jersey, he always looks very exceedingly attractive. I enjoyed Fred in this. Bon Jovi wasn't too bad in this. He played a more sort of low-key. You don't want everyone to be as hyped as, say, Bill or Fred is in the sketch. So it was a nice kind of contrast, especially the little bit about being very cagey about the no-show construction jobs.
Pretty much like the actual Tony Soprano saying he works in waste management, so we all know what they're going for.
It's one of those sketches I go to quite a bit, and I love the interplay between when Kristen came in for the speed round.
Hey, that's not on the card, Donna. What's your problem?
Your wife is my problem.
Oh, hey, guys, come on. Hey, you didn't see nothing. You saw nothing. Hey, come on. Settle down, cowboy. Settle down.
She throws the necklace that she gave him at him, and the show ends. It was definitely one of my favorite Bill game show excursions.
Bill's next appearance airs just before Weekend Update, the third installment of
La rivista della televisione con mio, Deej.
Our entire third episode of this podcast on each of those sketches. I ranked all these on my blog, and somehow I ranked this one my number one favorite out of all of these. It is one of my favorite early Bill Hader characters too. Yeah, so Bon Jovi's a guest. Vinny is just in utter disbelief that a man with the last name Bon Jovi isn't perfectly fluent in Italian, so why would he need a translator? He tries to conduct the interview in English, but he's not that fluent in English. As you hear, he overpronounces as much as all the English words he knows as much as possible.
Where in the Americas are you from, Bon Jovi?
Despite what a major backslide in basic language competency and literacy this represents for the character, they do their Sopranos impressions. Stevie Van Zandt as Silvio.
Hey, Tom, Thought you said we were gonna have a meeting, Tom. I think we should have a meeting, Tom. Hey,
Armisen does his Polly Walnuts,
You know what to do at a time like this, Tone? Send a message.
which is actually one of his better impressions. It works. Then Vinny asks Bon Jovi about the song Blaze of Glory, and they reveal that somehow this song has become the anthem of a cigarette company that prominently features smoking children and a smoking nun in their advertisements, played by Paul Pell. This happened without his permission. Vinny insists that those aren't little kids smoking, but no, those are 7, 8-year-olds, men. He asks about the song Dead or Alive, where he says, on a steel horse I ride, and he says the steel horse is a tour bus, not a literal robot horse. So he gives a cut it short signal to a man in a robot horse costume walking up behind him. And then Vinny starts a rousing Italian cover of Livin' on a Prayer. That was silly enough to work for me. But then the sketch ends with Jon Bon Jovi pointing out that even though he doesn't speak Italian, his grandmother did around the house, and he picked up a few Italian words from her, none of which he recognized Vinny and his crew using. So they just end this sketch in plain English, even though it enters this into a weird space ghost loop logic that just decimates the basic logic of the sketch, because, okay, now Vinny's more fluent in English than he is Italian. Jon Bon Jovi seems like he could or should be fluent enough in English if he was able to pick up words from a family member. And these are more arguments as to why this interview didn't need a translator.
Vinny Vedecci, I've always loved. I do understand why Bill doesn't want to do many more, because a woman of Italian descent was mentioning that it didn't really feel right. We know for sure we will never see Vinny Vedecci again. Unfortunate, but understandable. But that's just the kind person that Bill is. And the Sopranos impression's great. The cigarettes thing, the men, the robot horse, the things that they build for these these sketches, and very well made robot horse. As far as the Italian go, there are different varieties of Italian. So it is possible maybe Vinny's thing of Italian is from probably some more the extreme southern ones. Him calling out on this is not the Italian that I know, is I think it's Meta before Meta really became a thing. It does have a lot of great moments to it. I watch more, of course, for Bill than I do Bon Jovi, but he seemed to be game with that.
Bill's third and final appearance in this episode is sadly in what I consider at the time and still consider to be the weakest sketch in this episode. It's simply titled Where's My Purse?, where Kristen Wiig is Captain Wallace, who is a spaceship captain but is still kind of a dowdy, doddering old Midwestern woman who is too distracted by trying to figure out where she left her purse to focus on fending off an alien invasion led by Blorax, played by Bon Jovi. So see, the one time he didn't totally play himself, he played himself with like the most basic alien head prosthetics you've ever seen on this show. And it turns out she left her purse right next to her captain's chair where she normally sits. And she figured this out in the middle of an attack where aliens are shooting and killing her crew and they're fighting them off. And she makes an announcement of the loss and the finding of the purse, and the fact that she was almost about to leave her purse there when she got into the escape pod. And I like that she says this over a shot of Fred and Maya slumped dead over a control panel. Forte is just the voice of reason, her first officer trying to get her to focus up and bring her to the escape pod. So visually this is a lot like the Orville with Seth MacFarlane, but before the Orville. Bill does have an appearance in this, running in to warn them.
Captain! Aliens have boarded the ship and they...
Oh, man.
Kristen Wiig finds her purse He's, oh, here's my purse. I've been looking for all over. Holds everything and just nonchalantly pulls out a ray gun and zaps Keenan's alien, who he just says, ow, my face. And then those were all right, but the rest of this felt like one of those sketches, a harbinger for things to come as far as the trend of Kristen playing a lot of annoying, self-centered female characters between seasons 34 and 37, but this felt a little bit more grounded and less purposely wacky. I mean, haven't we all encountered an older woman exactly like this? Even an older man talking your ear off about personal grievances in their life. And hey, I got handed to Bon Jovi. I mean, this seemed to be the most game as a host he was willing to be, which isn't saying much. Deej, you look like you don't see eye to eye with my take on this.
Terrible sketch. Totally terrible. Did not work for me at all. I can't even give it, oh, it's a 10-to-1 thing as an excuse. That is just not it. The only thing I liked was the one line.
I know I had my purse earlier today because I paid for my breakfast, which I don't understand what we have to do.
The only thing I will disagree with you is I am an Orville fan. It's a damn good show. Really hoping that it comes back. I've enjoyed the heck out of it. Comparing this to the Orville, I think is an insult to the Orville.
Yeah, I didn't mean to trash the Orville.
Oh, no. I know. It's all good.
And the uniforms in the set were very aesthetically similar. I was thinking of something else besides Star Trek to compare this to, but
I wouldn't even compare it to Galaxy Quest, which is another masterpiece of science fiction and comedy. 10-to-1 style sketches that do become legends, such as Potato Chip. But there's reasons for that. People didn't know what to make of it. Didn't quite work. There's still a certain charm to the characterizations and how everything was played. Bill's part was great. It was very brief. I like they sort of changed the voice to they're attacking. There's like, oh man, it went on too long. It was a stupid premise. I think the big issue was, why was this in space? That was like, no, thank you.
On a lighter note, let's talk about some other moments that we liked from this episode that Bill may not have been in. And speaking of Seth MacFarlane and another one of his live action TV series from recent years, this sketch reminded me of what little I've seen of his Tad series, because it does mix 80s teen fashion with thick Boston accents. It's the cold open, takes place at Amy Poehler's house on this day in 1986 with a teenage Amy with the Benetton sweater and the big 80s hairspray hair, vents in her diary about this being the worst day of her life. She got her period on the balance beam and no one told her and everyone saw. Now people are calling her Amy Poehler. Her mom found some beer she hid in the laundry hamper and she was wicked pissed, and she has since forbidden her from going to see Jon Bon Jovi with opening act Cinderella, so she has to get her hair higher, and suddenly she passes out and falls into a hairspray poisoning induced delirium and hallucinates a long-haired 80s Jon Bon Jovi coming down off the poster from her closet door to tell her that his life sucked too when he was eating so many hoagies he got fat and kids called him Johnny Meatballs, and he was just a kid playing the French horn. But then he put down that French horn, picked up a guitar, and went from being John Francis Bon Jovi Jr. to Johnny Meatballs to Jon Bon Jovi. So he pursued his lifelong dream of being a rock star. He's trying to encourage Amy to follow her dreams, even if her aspirations may not be much higher than working at the Limited in addition to already shopping there, and renting her own apartment that she invites friends over for beers. She likes acting. She got a monologue in school that got a lot of laughs. Unfortunately, it was from the Diary of Anne Frank. Jon Bon Jovi tells her everything's going to be okay after all, because 21 years from now, you're going to be in the cast of Saturday Night Live, and I'm going to be the host. And her new dream is to look into a camera and say, live from New York, it's Saturday night. So this is a sketch. To me, most of the humor came from Amy's accent and the 80s teen angst and drama of it all. It was mostly another exercise in kind of stroking the host ego because they got him there. But Amy really did the most with what she had to barely put this over. It's just another moment where right out of the gate, Jon Bon Jovi was just borderline whispering all his lines. Here's perhaps my biggest problem with this sketch. It may be a minor thing. It's basically a take I saw from Stooge, where, first of all, this is October 12th, 1986, and this aired on October 13th, 2007. So Amy writes in her diary, October 12th, 1986. Later, she turns out to be surprised that Jon Bon Jovi would host Saturday Night Live and cut his hair, when she should be more surprised that SNL would even be on the air 20 years from now, because this would be after season 11, Lauren's disastrous return to the show. I mean, they just made a documentary about it on Peacock last year called Season 11, The Weird Year. There may not be that much out there this season to stream, but you can watch that documentary to get a feel on it. It was one of 2 times in SNL's history that I know of that the show was literally on the brink of cancellation until the George Wendt and Francis Ford Coppola episode aired. Brandon Tartikoff, president of NBC, thought that this show does have potential to be new and unique and interesting again, and he's a fan, so let's keep it. So instead of being surprised that Jon Bon Jovi is going to host and cut his hair, she should have been like, really, how is SNL going to be on the air 20 years? Have you seen that show lately? It sucks. It's bad. It's wicked boring. The critics hate it. But October 1986, that would have been like the day or the night after season 12 premiered, which did pretty much save the show, because that was the first season for Phil Hartman, Jan Hooks, Dana Carvey. And that did save the show. I'm sure I'm just splitting hairs, and Amy gives us a lot of her 80s sprayed up hair to split in this. And I'm sure I'm putting much more thought into this cold open than the writers did. So I'll just at least faintly praise the unique nature of this being the rare non-political cold open, which I guess they kind of had to do. Maybe Amy Poehler was a fan and wanted to do this, and her being Weekend Update host, probably she saw, well, this was a slow political news week, so let's just do this teenage fantasy of mine for the cold open, and we'll call it a week.
Well, I'm going to take a slightly less cynical take on this one. Personally, I thought it was very charming. Of course, Amy is a consummate professional. At being a teenager in the 80s, one of the strongest hairspray you can get, which she was probably using, is Aquanet, before even people knew that aerosol cans were affecting the ozone layer. But 80s hair was very big, very high, very teased. Tried to recover my hair after a few different episodes when I had longer hair in the probably 81, 82. I always love a non-political cold open. So the one thing that she focuses on is like,
Wait, Jon Bon Jovi! Am I ever gonna get boobs?
You just keep working on that personality, okay?
Yeah, okay, but and then boobs?
Eventually, you're gonna get a great set of personality.
which is a typical teenage girl scenario, but I really like this one.
If they just weren't off by a year on the date, I wouldn't have to overthink it so much. Fortunately for the rest of the world, Amy would develop a great personality that would get her very far in show business and get her on this show and on Parks and Rec and elsewhere.
It's a bit of a bias because I grew up in the 80s. It sort of speaks to me as a Gen X person.
Speaking as cynical, it's Jon Bon Jovi's monologue where he walks out and confirms that, yes, he and his band have been musical guests 3 previous times on this show, but tonight he's just the host, just focusing on the comedy. And they got the Foo Fighters here for music, although you wouldn't really know it even after watching this episode. This causes writer Liz Kukowski, as audience member number 1, to stand up and ask,
Sorry. Does that mean you won't be singing?
That's right, dear. I mean, tonight I'm just the host. I'm here for the comedy aspect of, the show.
Oh, okay. Well,
Foo Fighters are here.
Yeah, well, this should be fun.
Well, look,
and then Steve Higgins stands up, and maybe the line of the episode for me, he says,
Right. Because who wants to see Jon Bon Jovi sing? I want to see Jon Bon Jovi act. This will be the greatest night of my life.
why can't I just host and not have to sing? John's bandmate, Richie Sambora, playing himself, also in the audience, also with his guitar on him, holding his guitar, stands up just to ask, hey, don't we have a new album out? To which he says, yes. Any other questions?
Hey. Come on. I lost that.
Any other questions?
Apparently what happened in real life here was Richie Sambora either just forgot his line or more likely forgot where his cue card was. Jon Bon Jovi has to blatantly feed him his next line.
Did I ever consider your feelings?
Oh, did you ever consider my feelings? Did you ever consider the band's feelings?
That alone made this like 10 times funnier than it would have been had this gone as smoothly as it was supposed to. Jon Bon Jovi caves and says he did think about the band's feelings, so let's just walk over to the musical guest stage where the rest of the band already is and perform Lost Highway, which I think was his new title track from his album around this time. Pretty ironic that this song contains the lyric "Farewell to Mediocrity," and there's a fiddle in this. I don't really recall ever hearing, a fiddle in any other Bon Jovi songs I've heard, but that adds to the vibe and the feeling I get that this song is completely indistinguishable from every other adult contemporary country pop hit that came out in 2007, because Bon Jovi with a fiddle, like middle-aged, mellowed out Bon Jovi with a fiddle, sounds to me like this could have been a Daughtry song or a Keith Urban song or a Carrie Underwood song or any other arena country artist of this time. This could have been their song, but Bon Jovi wrote it for himself.
Indeed, I do. In particular, the links between Bill Hader and Liz Kukowski. They have worked together quite a lot. She was friends of Maggie Carey, his wife at the time. He did a couple episodes of The Jeannie Tate Show, which was an online series created by Liz and Maggie Carey. In Forgetting Sarah Marshall, Bill played Brian Breder. Liz was Brian's wife, Liz Breder. She voiced a teacher in Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. She was an aerobics instructor in The To-Do List. The ones he did with The Jeannie Tate Show, one is where all her interviews of The Jeannie Tate Show are done in her minivan. Part of that episode was also Aubrey Plaza playing her stepdaughter Tina. And there's a later on when Liz is out in Italy and randomly runs into Bill. He is trying to get away from her while she is trying to get him to stay for an interview. The earlier episode with the Jeannie Tate Show started with Bill picking up her dry cleaning. Kind of nice that they have this connection. It's like, why did they just make this a double duty episode? Because the Foo Fighters only gets one song. So they have this song and they do a song at the end instead of the traditional goodnight. When did double duty episodes start becoming a thing? Or were they always a thing?
I mean, I'm pretty sure the second episode of SNL from 1975 was a double duty episode with Paul Simon, but let me check. First double duty episode was Paul Simon in season 1. The second episode, Lily Tomlin, Desi Arnaz, Chris Christopherson, and then in season 2 we get Paul Simon again, technically.
Persona that Lily Tomlin put on, well, I don't know if I really want to count the technically counts as a double duty, but was very much a thing that would only happen at that time in television history. So
let's just gloss over this sketch because I know you don't really have a lot to say about it. It's a visit with former Vice President Al Gore. He just takes you on a tour of his personal trophy room, shows off all the types of awards he won for different versions of An Inconvenient Truth, the Oscar for the movie, the Grammy for the audiobook, and it just goes on like that. And he did this after the New Jersey game show sketch, so my first thought was that, wow, this might have been quite a rush of a quick change, and then I noticed there was a whole commercial break in between these two sketches, so this must be why he was walking into Bill's frame for a second when exiting the sketch. The thing this has going for it is that Darrell Hammond actually looked more like Al Gore at this point than when he started doing this impression regularly during the 2000 election cycle, just because the real Al Gore had aged in such a way that he looked a bit more like Darrell Hammond playing him. And if you've been watching SNL since then, you've been used to seeing him do this impression. And this was inspired by something Amy Poehler joked about in Weekend Update, where Al Gore won the Nobel Peace Prize this week due to environmental work. He also mentions an award from the National Institute of Political Science called the Poppy, which goes to candidates who win the popular vote in an election without actually getting to be president, which prize that got the applause it did in 2007. Even if this was a bit repetitive, I did get a kick out of a few odd awards here, like his college diploma, which weird that it's in Latin, but the college was Harvard, and that got no applause. He won an AVN award for best group sex scene in the porno version of An Inconvenient Truth. He got a participation certificate from the National Punt, Pass, and Kick competition. He framed a measles vaccination certificate. It's not an award, but he's proud enough of it to have it framed. He also framed a flyer that says, "You've won a free DVD player. To get it, you have to attend this scam timeshare meeting for a condo." And he also has a Heisman Trophy. Not his, O.J. Simpson's. He just bought it with his Nobel Prize money from eBay. And that gets the applause that it makes sense that would get in 2007. And one other sketch from right before Jon Bon Jovi was on SNL the first time in January 1993 was a sketch Harvey Keitel did in his episode that he hosted at that time called An Insane Idiot and His Descending Size Collection of Deer Heads. We have smaller and smaller deer heads. One's a toy deer. One's a mouse head that he glued antlers on. One that's just a microscope that is like, he shows this. I think this is the amoeba of a deer that I'm hoping to get like an electron laser thing to cut its head off and mount it.
Yeah, the only thing I would say is the whole sketch just didn't work for me. Part of that is, and I'm sure I'll probably get some flack for this, but I'm overall not a big Darrell Hammond fan. Appreciate his talent. He does do good impressions, but of the two, I guess you say, elder statesmen of this era, the early Bill parts of SNL, I am definitely more of I love Chris Parnell. When he was in Hot Rod, when he did trying to bring AM radio back, Dr. Spaceman on 30 Rock, he's Darrell Hammond. I've just never really been a big fan.
Well, who doesn't love Chris Parnell? That's what I want to know. We all do. Anyone who's seen him at least on SNL does. Next, it's 2007, so it wouldn't be an SNL episode without one of these. Digital short. This one is people getting punched just before eating. Andy Samberg just runs into frame and just lands a series of various wild, near flailing punches on various people. Some of his castmates like Will Forte, Jason Sudeikis, some of his fellow writers like Jorma Taccone, and some other special guests of this episode that the host of musical guests. Andy flailing in and socking people right in the mouth before they take a bite out of whatever food's in their hands. So, I mean, like most early digital shorts this era, this is just pure, silly, goofy fun designed to bring a much-needed boost of energy into this episode right when it needed one. The beepity-boopity light techno soundtrack of this short complemented this perfectly, especially when Andy would just follow every other punch by doing a goofy, tongue-waggling, finger-pointing jig. Has anyone ever been able to find out the title of this song? I didn't think to Shazam it or anything before I watched this episode.
I can confirm that the background music for this is an original creation.
So he starts out by punching Forte when he's about to eat a slice of New York pizza. First, we see Dave Grohl and Taylor Hawkins from the Foo Fighters sit down in the NBC commissary, and Taylor Hawkins is about to eat a single French fry, and Andy punches him, and they all have captions like punched, And then Dave Grohl sees that he's down and is about to eat one of his fries before Andy punches him to double punch. And he manages to punch Jon Bon Jovi before he eats a salad with the caption Jovi punch, which, hey, I thought that was kind of fun. But then he gets up and does like a 2-second guitar lick and blows a kiss to the camera and it says full recovery. I wonder if Jon Bon Jovi insisted on that. Andy is about to punch Jason Sudeikis before he eats a burger, but suddenly Jason gets a call on his cell phone, so Andy has to bring his whole body to a screeching halt and scrunch himself up to stop him from punching Jason until his phone calls over. Forte returns with a black eye and threatens to punch Andy before he could even punch him, so Andy backs off. Forte takes a bite of pizza, and then Andy pops up behind him and garrots him with a caption, murder. He punches a few more people. This part might seem like LOL random for the time. The last person he punches, suddenly he's holding a severed arm, because if you blink, you might have missed this. Last person he punched was eating a severed human arm. He sees Fred Armisen as a zombie come up from the ground. Zombies are chasing him. So he runs across green screen backdrops of Paris and Egypt, and then he's in Russia doing a zombie dance, which ends with the caption, believe in your dreams.
As they say on the Lonely Island podcast, Criterion Collection, classic visual shorts, and he gets to be his wonderfully goofy self. The music that they created, very happy with, but we're showing people getting punched for no good reason. Like, granted, Andy is being a bit of a dick, but it's Andy being a dick. And the second scene where he's punched Will Forte again, and he basically just sort of like, okay, no, you're not. And that drove him to murder. The zombie thing at the end was random, but ever since Thriller, zombies dancing has been a thing. There was even a episode of The Wizards of Waverly Place where they had to fight a group of zombies. They happened to be at a school dance. They resolved that with a dance-off. It's one that makes me very happy, not only for the music, but just all the different beats and Andy being the wonderful goofball that he is.
Next, we get sort of a two-part runner, but something that worked for me. The debut of Jason Sudeikis' Dane Cook impression, which he would only do like 3 times on SNL, and 2 of them were in this episode. It's parroting this series of promos for that year's World Series playoffs that the real Dane Cook did for TBS when they were showing World Series playoff games. So he hypes up the National League matchup between the Boston Red Sox and a team that has since become known as the Cleveland Guardians, but back then they were known as the Cleveland Indians. The Red Sox are going to need more than smallpox-infested blankets against these Indians. They're going to need baseball hits. I like this line about Cleveland's then pitcher CC Sabathia. This CC's not a music factory, he's a pitching factory. And this ends on the line of, there's only one baseball in 1 October, and there's only one logical spokesperson for baseball, and that's me, Dane Cook. And Jason does a good impression of Dane Cook. He's got an accurate handle on the voice and the physicality and just his delivery, his style of comedy and joke delivery. And I do remember these weird TBS baseball promos from around this time, and it really does a great job of mocking how odd and inexplicable they felt back then. It was TBS's 2007 equivalent of when ABC inexplicably hired Dennis Miller as commentator on Monday Night Football in the early 2000s. I guess they thought he'd be this generation's Howard Cosell. Although, why would this generation need its own Howard Cosell, and why him? It also reminds me of Patton Oswalt did a whole routine on the time ESPN hired Robert Evans from Hollywood to tell insane Hollywood Coke party stories and then tie them into whatever sports action you can watch on ESPN. And the second one, another reason I remember this thing fondly, it's Dane Cook hyping up the American League Championship match between the Arizona Diamondbacks and the Colorado Rockies. I was just glad to see that my home team, the Colorado Rockies, made it all the way to the World Series in my lifetime. even if they went up against the Boston Red Sox, who beat them and won again, even though like 3 years earlier they'd finally broken the curse of the great Bambino and won the World Series. I know you said, Deej, you don't know from sports, but do you have anything to add here?
You took the words right out of my mouth. At the very least, I can say that Jason does a very good Dane Cook impression.
Next, we get Weekend Update, which kind of a rarity for like the past 20 years. It's on before the musical guest. Seth and Amy. Seth's best jokes are about people getting phantom BlackBerry vibrations.
In an effort to combat these phantom sensations, makers of the BlackBerry suggest you stop doing cocaine.
Scalps from cadavers to cure baldness.
The only side effect so far? Vultures.
A study on when strippers menstruate.
According to a new study, strippers earn more in tips in the week before they menstruate than any other time. Which begs the question, who gave Dirty Lou a research grant?
And we see a photo of John Lutz holding up money. Amy asks a good joke about a tribute to Che Guevara, who was a Cuban guerrilla leader and a revolutionary, and not, as many young people think, the founder of Urban Outfitters. Speaking of teens, a boy broke the record for the least amount of time to solve a Rubik's Cube.
The teen said afterward that he would need a lot more time to solve the puzzle that is woman.
There was a lost boy found in the Amazon rainforest who survived by just hanging out at a local Starbucks, and robot facial massages by experimental robot.
So please, just relax as I put this experimental robot on your face.
And we get some commentaries in this. The first one is from an NBC employee named Rosa Santiago, who is here because NBC employees have been asked to pitch in with a few jokes to get them through the potential at this time upcoming WGA writer's strike. This is just an odd, anti-comedy bit Maya did. I don't mind her telling purposely bad jokes, but having her do so in kind of a thick accent as, well, what I assume to be a Latina custodian, that seemed a bit iffy to me. There was a brief bit of improv with the loose wood paneling on the desk.
They sound the same. Yes. This is loose.
They do.
I gotta fix it. I come back tomorrow when you're not working.
Fix that. Thank you, Rosa.
Yeah, her jokes were about roommates in an argument where one stabs the other over his smelly feet, and when reached for comment said he was so not gelling, because that was a commercial from that time that I barely remember.
Quick editor Deej moment. That commercial was for Dr. Scholl's Gel Insole.
A joke about a man who was arrested for driving a minivan while naked and masturbating.
Or what Seth calls taking a drive.
Very good, Rosa. That was good.
I don't get that joke.
Because when you drive, you masturbate.
I do that. That's a good joke.
Thank you, Seth.
And I like the way she delivered this joke about Pamela Anderson and Rick Solomon tying the knot
in his penis.
I think this got on the air because it was just mutually understood that Maya already had a foot out the door for the last couple seasons, and that there was a strong possibility that either this or next week could have been her last episode, because she didn't sign on for a full season and there was a looming writer's strike, so you just wanted one second to last chance to goof around with Amy. Speaking of goofy, Samberg pops by as a man who was seen walking around in public naked, talking on a cell phone and entering a Tad Steaks.
The police said they knew something was wrong with the man when he walked into a Tad Steaks.
Sandberg walk in as this guy. He says on the phone that the squares are totally freaking that he's here naked, and then he bends down to pick up a quarter and says bye to his mom, who he's speaking to.
The best thing about that when Annie walks in is when he bends over for the quarter, they're first discussed it, then they actually look on in appreciation.
It was just brief and silly enough to get by for me. Speaking of anti-comedy, this is a debut of Fred Armisen's character Nicholas Fane, who I think has fully earned its bad rap, but this was his first appearance. I can cut him a little slack since I like the first one okay. This is right before Armisen jumped the shark and hadn't burned off any goodwill he earned from actually doing off-kilter anti-comedy that worked. And I don't know, it's far from the absolute worst character he ever did, but I thought I'd heard or read extremely secondhand, third-hand somewhere that Fred went on Mark Maron's podcast and explained, oh, this guy's supposed to be a parody of David Cross, who would actually say this or do this when he was trying to make a point and just struggling for his words. And I can see that, having seen some recent footage of David Cross.
I've said this before, and I'll say it again. And I usually don't like to use this word for something, but I hate Nicholas Vane. I absolutely hate the character. I hate the performance. I'm sure some people find the first one funny. I didn't find any of it ever funny. It's always a struggle for me when something doesn't quite get to the point of something, of people just go on and on about stuff. And that's like the worst kind of comedian for me. It should have been a one and done, but unfortunately it was a one and overdone. I personally liked Maya Rudolph's appearance. I thought it was very charming. I just like how she seems to be having fun with it and reacting to the desk going all weird. And that just proves what a star that Maya Rudolph is. One thing I really loved was the picture of Nick Nolte's new baby, which was a combination of a baby and his infamous mugshot. So that reaction shot was really awesome.
After Weekend Update, which usually doesn't happen, we see this episode's actual musical guests, the Foo Fighters, perform The Pretender. And it's sadly their only song. And what is the musical guest only does one song after Update. I thought this was season 33, not 23. But this is a pretty solid performance, much like most of the rest of their performances on SNL. And normally I like the Foo Fighters in this song, but something seemed a little off vocally with Dave Grohl. Like maybe losing his voice or having trouble staying on key. I only noticed it like the first time I watched this episode. The other times I've seen his performance, he sounds fine, but something seemed a little off to me. The next thing that we have to talk about is something that's very hard to find online, but it doesn't have this next segment, which I believe was only added in reruns. It's the Notre Dame football on NBC promo, actual footage of Notre Dame football games set to Steve Higgins doing a voiceover about just how bad the Notre Dame football team is, how badly they play. The second to last sketch is What to Call the Band. This appears to take place inside a recording/rehearsal studio in Sayreville, New Jersey in 1984. Bon Jovi is his 80s long-haired self again, along with his bandmates, Richie Sambora, played by Jason Sudeikis, drummer Tico Torres, played by Fred Armisen, keyboardist Alan John Such, played by Forte, and David Bryant, played by Sandberg. Jon Bon Jovi doesn't remember their names, but they're holding a vote. The rest of the band is unanimously in favor of calling themselves Natural Disaster. Jon Bon Jovi wants to call the band Bon Jovi because he thinks it's a fun to say 80s band name. So we kind of get to see Bon Jovi poke fun at the idea that he does have an ego too big for its own good. It's a little strange. It's the second sketch of this whole show where our host plays his previous long-haired 80s self. The cold open probably wasn't written until like Friday the earliest, and it went on a little too long and meandered. I do like the way Jason sold the frustration of it, and Jon Bon Jovi saying he didn't remember the names of Will and Andy's bandmates, and then he says, why don't we call it Bon Jovi for the first 5 years, and then the next 5 years will change to Sambora, Torres, and then these other two guys' names I don't remember. And Will's character almost threatens to leave until Jon Bon Jovi says something, and he says, all right, I'm only going to stay for like the first 25 years, but that's it. The ending says, okay, we'll call ourselves Bon Jovi for now, but what are we going to call our first album? John says, I have a thought. He's like, oh, come on. And then I think we show the actual first Bon Jovi album cover. I think is named Bon Jovi, and he's the only one on it. It's not that uncommon for new bands and artists to have their first album be a self-titled album. It's only that ending that didn't quite work for me.
this was a good sketch. I mean, it's nice that he was able to a little bit sort of poke some fun at himself. So maybe it went on a little long, but it was, for what it was effective.
The last sketch in this episode is the parody of the IFC show Iconoclast. And this was when IFC was, the independent film channel. So this was before Comedy Bang Bang, when they were truly about independent films. So a show like Iconoclast would have fit on their network. So we see IFC continue its proud tradition of having a show where two random famous people say words at each other's faces at public locations. This time we get singer Bjork, played by Kristen Wiig, and former athlete Charles Barkley, played by Kenan Thompson, just talking about God knows what at the Cheesecake Factory. It's a fun little goofy note to end this episode on. The timing of it is interesting because this was, it was a full year after the actual Iconoclast had Lorne Michaels and Paul Simon on the same episode. And they also did one with Maya Angelou and Dave Chappelle around this time separately. You can tell this was done in good spirits and not mean ones after, NBC and Lorne gave IFC access to SNL's behind the scenes just for this show. They weren't making fun of it, even though the take is, I'll just have two random people on the show together. We get the debut of appearances of two notable SNL impressions here. Kristen's Bjork, which is another impression of Bjork that focused solely on how weird and quirky she is as an artist rather than anything else about her as a singer. Kenan's Charles Barkley, an impressionism I've always found very funny. This being the debut of Kenan's Barkley, we're seeing sort of an early primitive version of it before Kenan decided he needed to tighten up. So the speech patterns are slower. The voice is closer to the way the actual Charles Barkley speaks. And for some reason, this makes his Barkley give off a more distinctly effeminate and a little flamboyant vibe that reminds me more of his DJ Dynasty handbag character from Deep House Dish. And it almost sounds like a Little Richard impression at times. But there were standout moments here, like Kristen Wiig making it snow by throwing salt in the air and bringing along a single bicycle wheel, claiming this was her ride that she used to get here today. And I especially like Kenan calling Bjork Bork and saying she is like Dennis Rodman if he was a tiny white lady.
Yeah, Bork, the Bork definitely put me over the top on this. I like that one line, two humans with mouths making noises that are words. For what it was pretty good. And I'm sorry, but even listening to Bjork speak, she's quirky. It's what she is. She's very kind of, even in some of her vocals, she's kind of all over the place. I mean, very good, very talented and well-respected artist, but that is kind of what Bjork is kind of all about. She's just being herself. It just happens to be really, really weird. A weird that she gets paid for, so there you go.
Okay, and then we get the good nights, and one of the first people we see on this stage is Jack Nicholson. What? Who, I gotta say, this guy must really hate doing television because not only has he never hosted SNL in 50 years, despite making a few odd cameos now and then, like when Helen Hunt hosted in the 90s and they were plugging as good as it gets, and just doing the anniversary specials, at least the two recent ones. But I can't say I've ever seen Jack Nicholson as a guest on many American talk shows either. I don't know if he's ever done Carson or Leno or Letterman. I've certainly never seen him on Conan or Craig Ferguson, but I also wonder what he even had in common with Jon Bon Jovi around this time. They could have made a good episode of Iconoclast. I think I vaguely remember hearing that both Jack Nicholson and Jon Bon Jovi were part owners and investors in either two different arena football teams or the same one. But anyway, he's only here to introduce Bon Jovi's second performance of Who Says He Can't Go Home. Before that, he thanks Lorne, Marcy, and Steve for having him on, which is nice. And this song does sound pretty identical to the first one he did instead of a monologue. And I guess he named those people just to be billed as a host and still do both those songs with his band.
Yeah, I don't know why they did that. Maybe it was because Dave Grohl wasn't feeling that well to perform. If that was the case, fine. But if they just like a lot of people at the time, it's like, I just didn't get it. This second song was not necessary. They have a perfectly wonderful band that is Foo Fighters, so why?
That's our episode for this week. And 2 weeks from now, we're going back to Documentary Now, Season 1, with our coverage of Episode 3, the Canuck Uncovered episode.
Thank you for joining us once again. I am Deej Barons and will continue to be.
And I will still be Casey Killingsworth until I'm informed otherwise.
And we very much love and heart Hater.
We heart Hater. It's what we do.
Thank you for listening to We Heart Hater. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe and leave a rating and review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or wherever you get your podcasts. We Heart Hater is a presentation of Wacky Notion Productions. Created by Deej Barons. Hosted by Deej Barons and Casey Killingsworth. Recording and editing by Deej Barons. Intro and outro music by Music Unlimited, used under Creative Commons license, courtesy of Pixabay.com.